Success. All right. Welcome to our podcast discussion for week one. The episode was the Messy Middle podcast, a pretty well-known fitness, uh, I'll call her an influencer, but she's very well educated and has a really, really successful business of training, hybrid specifically training. So she trains a lot of folks virtually and has a lot of great programming for folks who are doing endurance training and strength training kind of simultaneously, and has lots of really great programming within that. And she has her PhD in exercise physiology, and she is just a really great resource to have in the fitness industry. I chose the podcast, and she has a lot of great podcasts as well. I chose this one because I thought it was pretty relevant to what we're talking about in the winter wellbeing program, where the main goal of the program is creating sustainable but realistic well-being strategies and behaviors, especially not only through like busy winter months through the holidays, but also just in our busy day-to-day lives, that it's hard to implement well-being strategies either all at once or big overhauls. And really what we want to focus on is the small changes that make big impacts over a certain amount of time. So with that, Alyssa Olenek, like I said, is a PhD fitness professional. And this episode is about step goals. And is that 10,000 step goal appropriate or realistic or even research backed? So I think the first thing I want to touch on is what kind of that stood out to me is, and to get your all reaction, you can use emojis or use the chat function if you'd like, but does that magic 10,000 step recommendation like feel unrealistic or unsustainable for most? If you want to give a thumbs up or a yes or no in the chat, that can kind of be helpful for moving the conversation. But like 10,000 steps, I feel like is a lot. And especially if you're a person who works a computer/desk job and have a lot of time seated, it can kind of feel intimidating. And especially if you already have workouts kind of planned through your week. And it's another, thing that kind of could stress you out rather than, making it kind of an added bonus or benefit as far as health is concerned. So one thing that she leads off with is that 10,000 steps isn't necessarily, I don't want to say supported by research, because 10,000 steps is not going to hurt you. It has great benefits, but 10,000 steps is a lot. And the research actually supports more of that 7,000 to 8,000 step goal or step range, where if you're going from not as many steps, that lower step number, to increasing by 1,000 or so at a time, that 7,000 to 8,000 is kind of that magic middle, that magic number where you're getting the biggest bang for your buck. There's small benefits beyond that, and you're definitely going to still have improvements, but the biggest improvements are from that, 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, all the way up to 8,000. And so that I think is the one thing that stood out to me. And what I'd like to hear, I think, from you all, and you definitely don't have to come off mute or on camera or anything, but did that research surprise you? Because there's been a lot of messaging in, social media world and things like that, where, sitting is the new smoking and things like that. But and then that 10,000 step goal has been pushed for a long time as well. And I feel like it's almost having the opposite effect, where it's like, you think negatively of your routine or negatively of your step goal if you don't get to that 10,000. And that can start a harmful way of thinking, as well, as if that 10,000 is the like golden standard, and it really just isn't. So like, I think reevaluating that and like thinking more in that 7,000 to 8,000 step is going to be a much more realistic and sustainable goal to have. Um, uh, And then another thing that I think one of my biggest takeaways, um, and I think I'll invite you all to think of what your biggest takeaway is from this podcast. I think it was a really she tends to like she sometimes talks really fast because she's just so passionate. So sometimes it can be hard to track, and it can get a little sciencey as well. But I think one of my biggest takeaways was daily movement in addition to your workouts. And so she spent a lot of time talking about um, your workout is a small portion of your day. So if you do, your workouts that are 30 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week, that's awesome. But if you do that and then go and sit at your desk the rest of the day without moving too much, um, that has some implications on health. And what is going to make a bigger difference, I think, when it comes to longevity and overall health is making sure we move throughout our day and break up that sitting, that the duration of sitting. And so I'm gonna check in with my notes for just a moment here, make sure I'm staying on track. Yeah, the 30-minute or even a 2-hour workout every day is a really small piece of your day and doesn't necessarily give permission to be sedentary the rest of the day. And so I think she talked about research that there's a more favorable metabolic response after eating with higher step counts, even if you're otherwise active. And so I thought that was wild to think that the more active people, if they were sedentary the rest of the day, they didn't have a good metabolic response after eating. But the people that had higher step counts and maybe not necessarily like structured workouts, um, they still had that really favorable metabolic response after eating. And so she touched on a lot of movement after eating is great for glucose and blood sugar regulation. And a lot of times that's important for people who have diabetes or other metabolic conditions, but it's great for people that are just generally in good health as well, making sure that that blood glucose is regulated well after eating and things like that. So movement in general and step counts can really play a role in that metabolic function as well. So I'm going to pause for just a moment here and let us take a minute. If you could share like your biggest takeaway or any thoughts in general on anything that I've talked about so far. I am going to use a timer just to kind of make sure I give you enough time to to think and type. So I thought I knew where the timer was. There it is. I'll do like 90 seconds. We'll do that. There we go. Let me see if I can do video. Like biggest takeaway you can write, or just any thoughts that you have on what I've talked about so far. About a minute 15 left. I'm playing around with this music app. I haven't been in here very much. Last 30 seconds. All right. I'll figure out how to stop it. There we go. Nice. I kind of like that timer function. All right. Just reading through the comments. I love those takeaways. The metabolic response was really interesting, I thought. Even like from a fitness professional perspective, I love when people and fitness professionals have the approach where it's not an all or nothing situation. And yes, that 10,000 steps has been way overhyped. And I will say that it's not just steps, there's a lot of fitness trends and topics that are very much overhyped as far as the benefits that it gives you. And I just realized the music is still on. There we go. Um, and you know, we could talk more about those fitness trends in perhaps a different discussion, but yeah, this a lot of the times it's overhyped, or that all or nothing approach or mentality can be, you know, not harmful, but you know, like negatively impacting your, you know, the way you view things. And yeah, it's nice to hear a well-educated person that's just not like, you know, following trends or, um, you know, wanting to sell programming and things like that, and, you know, give permission to, you know, not have to kill yourself to get 10,000 steps when it's not that big of a benefit between, you know, 7 and 10,000. Um, Obviously we want people to move more, but giving this huge goal of 10,000 steps is really does a disservice to a lot of folks, because that almost sets up that all or nothing mindset, which which is not a great mindset to have. And so I think one thing that I've been focusing on as a coach for the last, really since social media fitness became a big thing, is that giving permission kind of mindset is, and it's like I have a lot of pregnancy and postpartum clients that I work with, and there's a whole other, you know, pressure associated with pregnancy and postpartum, but do what you can when you can and build those small habits, and they'll make big impacts throughout, you know, an extended period of time. Um, yeah, citing resources is something that, and she did it in a really honest way. She had the study like in her hand and she was reading it, and she wasn't like taking things out of context. That's another big thing in the fitness social media world, is that sometimes people will show studies that show different results, but they'll cherry pick different things that confirm their bias or confirm what they're saying, when that's not really what's actually happening in the study. And so I hate that fitness professionals do that and mislead people in that way. And so what I like that Alyssa Olenek does is she is very transparent about what the studies say. And hopefully, I mean, I'm a fitness professional, so I have a little bit of a nuanced perspective for fitness research, but hopefully I thought she broke it down in a way that was easy to understand, and um, easy to understand, and was easy to learn from, and had really good takeaways too. So I know this podcast discussion is set for 30 minutes, but you know, we didn't necessarily have to do that 30-minute. We like to keep things short and sweet and really digestible when it comes to discussing and learning, because you know, at the end of the day, we're all really busy. So I'll give it another minute here, and if there's any last like wrapping up discussion or thoughts on this, but or if you all have another like topic that you'd like to see us throw a podcast in for this learning category. There's so many different ways we could go, but uh like we do a lot of myth busting as well, because those social media trends and um myths and misleading type things, there's a lot of that going around in the fitness industry. And while I really like that social media has made it information easily accessible, it's been kind of a double-edged sword. There's been a lot of things that have, you know, turned into misleading things and potentially harmful misinformation out there as well. So it's hard to navigate at the end of the day. Fitness and nutrition is really hard to navigate in the fitness in the social media space. And I think one of my favorite things to do is give people resources within that space, TikTok, Instagram, because I know you all don't have time to vet your resources either. You don't have time to look up credentials and things like that. So I like to provide those resources to everyone where I've done the vetting. I feel like this is a trusted resource. They do their evidence-based research as well, and they present it in a nice way that's digestible too. So social media resource navigation can be hard, and I like to help with that as much as I can. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining. And I don't think we have a podcast discussion every week. I think it's every other week. But again, throw me any topics that you'd like to learn more about, or any specific podcast recommendations that you feel are good ones as well. I always love to hear more about podcast recommendations. So thanks so much for coming, and hope to see you next time.